Hey, thank you for checking out Indie Overcast. You may have seen our pilot or even read it in the title. This episode will be an overview and rating of Cave Story Plus Overcast style. We don't use numerical ratings here at the channel. We separate our games into non-ranked categories, and your job will be to come to your own category before I, or your host, reaches the Hypercast chosen category. These categories are Timeless, Hidden Gem, Typical, Run-of-the-Mill, and Wildcard. Are you still with me? Awesome. My name is Xavier, and I will be your host for this episode of Indie Overcast. Now, let us embark on the journey that is Cave Story. Cave Story is an indie game created by Daisuke Amaya, who also goes by Pixel. Cave Story was a project made during his free time over 5 years, and impressively enough, he did this while attending college and working a job before finally launching the game in 2004. Cave Story was made with inspiration to the games he played when he was a child, such as Metroid and Castlevania. He created 3 other games before he made Cave Story, and those were Ika-chan, developed in 2000, Azarashi, developed in 2001, and Glasses, developed in 2003. All music in the game, including story and characters, were composed and created by Mr. Amaya himself. Since its release, Cave Story has seen many re-releases and remasters as a result of great reception from players. The version we'll be covering in this episode of Overcast is the Cave Story Plus remaster for Nintendo Switch. Alright, enough history. Now, the game itself. An evil doctor posing as a medical researcher with a group of other researchers land on the floating island. The evil doctor for short, obtains the demon crown, granting him powers and control of two of the reoccurring antagonists, Misery and Balrog. This is the start of his plan to dominate the surface with a powerful army of Mimiga who become crazed and larger in size when they consume a certain red flower, the demon flower. So in the game, when you start playing, you initially wake up in a dark cave as a robot named Quote, which you don't learn until later on, with not a clue to who you are or what the hell happened leading up to now. After a little bit of trial and error, maybe for some a little bit more, the player finally obtains a grasp on the game's floaty controls and stumbles upon a door below. You receive your first gun there, the Polar Star. From there, you fall into a village of Mimiga who are decreasing in number due to the doctor's test. From there, you begin your quest to find the members of the medical team and oppose the doctor's plan for world domination. So, what kind of game is Cave Story? Cave Story is a platformer that follows the rules of old-school Mario Bros. Platforming with action-packed, rapid-fire shooting, reminiscent of the games like Metroid or Contra. The platforming in Cave Story can be very floaty and may be the cause of some of the deaths that you'll have in the game. Does it take away from the enjoyment? For me and Brandon, who played the game in co-op, not so much. But for others who are used to tight controls of the characters, or those with less experience with this type of game or platformers in general, it certainly could. Now, let's talk guns. Arguably, the defining part of Cave Story's gameplay. In total, there are 10 unique guns with their own quirks and uses. Some of these guns can be upgraded and traded for other guns. That said, it won't be possible to get all the guns in a single playthrough without losing a few. For example, if you trade in the Polar Star to Curly for the machine gun, you cannot get the Spur later on. Each gun can be developed from experience boosting collectibles that look like, well, nachos. Yes, I will be sticking with nachos until the bitter end. The final level for each gun is its third, but be careful, that level can go down should you receive damage, thus debuffing the gun you worked up. Speaking of buffs, the Polar Star is an energy pistol with a decent damage output and a generous range. It's the starting gun of Cave Story that takes you through the ins and outs of basic 4-directional shooting. The missile launcher, recovered in the Egg Corridor, serves as explosive damage, but has limited ammo. This gun proves useful when you need more oomph in your shot. The fireball found in Santa's house, a Mimiga named Santa, found in the bushlands. The gun works a lot like the fire plant from Super Mario Bros. The fireball bounces up and down and can even climb slopes. The bubble line. Acquired in Mimiga Village, limited to 100 shots, and regenerates over time. The machine gun also has 100 shots and regenerates automatically. Level 3 increases the damage and lets you hover when firing down. King's Sword, aka Blade, is obtained in the Sand Zone warehouse. Instead of using it as a melee weapon, it is a straightforward short-range throwing weapon. Level 3 deals massive damage, making some bosses, in my opinion, a lot easier. For example, the core. Snake, you get at Chaba's shop in the Labyrinth. This is the only weapon that shoots through walls. It shoots fire-esque projectiles and has unlimited ammo. The Super Missile is a cool take on Metroid's Super Missiles, giving your missiles a nice boost in power and range. This weapon is hidden away in the Labyrinth boulder chamber. At level 1, the spur shoots shots that were previously level 3 shots on the Polar Star. Those shots become more powerful when holding down the button to charge the spur. Personally, I like to shout Divine Punishment when aiming down one of these shots on an enemy, but you can do what works for you. And finally, the Nemesis is the last weapon in the game and is recovered in the Outer Wall Little House after a short side quest. At level 1, the Nemesis is at full power. However, acquiring XP until level 1 renders you with a joke of a weapon that shoots rubber ducks. Very funny of you, Mr. Amayu. General upgrades are where things start to get a little weird. The jetpack is received later in the game from Professor Booster. The player has a choice to either rescue Professor Booster, resulting in his death, but in turn, they will give you the basic jetpack, and this jetpack allows you to ascend for a short period of time like a hover. Now, if the player decides to leave the fallen Professor Booster, he will appear later on perfectly fine and give the player an even better jetpack, the Jetpack version 2, which allows you to fly directionally for a brief period with limited fuel. Moving on to the Nachos. When defeating an enemy in the game, they might drop these collectibles that hop on the ground for the player to collect. These drop collectibles serve as experience points that upgrade your gun. However, taking damage lowers the XP bar and can even drop the level of your gun entirely. The side quests of this game are simple enough. You might have to save somebody from a sticky situation or receive some items, aka a fetch quest. Quests can either be story related for progression, or you can do so for extra guns and items. So who are our characters in Cave Story and what are their goals? So as far as our protagonists, we have, quote, the main character of Cave Story. He is the character that you'll find yourself playing as the first time around. He aims to stop the Doctor's plans of raising an army against the surface with the help of the allies he meets through his story. Curly Brace is the main partner of Quote. Curly is an upbeat and badass robot who's periodically saved through the story and aims to protect the Mimiga and defeat the Doctor alongside her friend Quote. Sue Sakamoto, initially the damsel of distress in Cave Story, she used to be a human but got shapeshifted into a Mimiga thanks to Misery. Sue plans on saving the island from the Doctor's grasp and turning back into a human. King, leader of Mimiga Village, protects the village from the horrendous Doctor who killed off his friend Arthur, a friend of King's and previous warrior of Mimiga Village. This leads to King trying to enact revenge on the Doctor and wanting to kill him no matter what. Professor Booster is a scientist that helps Quote throughout the story. He aims to stop the Doctor by aiding Quote with quest direction and a jetpack. Kazuma Sakamoto. Kazuma is Sue's older brother and also a Sakamoto, a family of researchers who came to the island along with the Doctor and Professor Booster. He is a very big coward, complaining about being stuck in a warehouse until Sue and Quote save him. Kazuma just wants to get off the island and never return. As for our antagonists of the game, Doctor, aka Fuyuhiko Date, main antagonist of Cave Story, he originally served as a medical doctor accompanying Professor Booster, Ito, and the Sakamotos on their research expedition on the island. But his true goal was to find the Demon Crown, grow the Demon Flowers, and lead an army for world domination. Misery is a witch who is under the command of the Doctor. Her mother is Jenka and her uncle is Balos. Misery made Balos create the Demon Crown, and his response was to force her to serve whoever wears it. Misery's true intentions is to be rid of the Demon Crown and break her curse. Balrog, a strange monster under the command of the Doctor and Misery's punching bag. Just like Misery, he has to obey whoever wears the Demon Crown. During the game, he doesn't even want to follow the doctor's plan and even saves Quote and Curly in the good ending. If anything, he comes off as a childish character who follows strength. Ballos, the secret evil of Cave Story and the true antagonist. He is the brother of Jenka, and due to the king being jealous of him, he tortured Ballos. While being tortured, he lost control of his power, killing the kingdom. With his daughter of the kingdom, he was sealed away by Jenka. He created the Demon Crown, which cursed both Misery and Balrog. His goal is to be freed of his insanity. So, you know just about the great gist of Cave Story with our overview. Let's talk about our thoughts, mine specifically. So, to me, Cave Story was like a fever dream in the form of a cute and memorable video game. Each ally you meet has some unique personality about them. On top of memorable characters, the music leaves me humming and thinking about the game even when I'm not playing. I found myself not wanting the game to end because of the character-driven story and the sense of urgency to stop the Doctor. The battles against tough bosses had me on the edge of my seat. At some point, I would say some of the bosses and corridors were too extreme in difficulty, but looking back, I realized this is a game about learning from your mistakes and trying again. Each death, you learn something new. You devise a new approach to the problem. That's the kind of gameplay that Cave Story offers. For that, I think difficulty was not difficult, but fair rather. Your death is fair for the experience you have on the current situation. The number of learned mistakes grows as you achieve your goal. That's how I would put it into my own words. So, how does it stack up? You could argue that I'm running off the fumes of nostalgia, but after playing the game again, to my surprise, the game was unchanged. The characters were still quirky, but driving plot forces in the simple story. The gameplay is undesirably slippery and floaty, but somewhat holds up and doesn't make me consider quitting or blaming my death on unrelated things. I would say it holds its ground very well when faced against newer indie titles. The game rewards progress with exposure of the main character and environment. The music is something I find memorable even today, and the gameplay leaves room for learning and experimentation. My biggest criticism of Cave Story is the game's lack of clarity hits big when you get to the forking story points, such as helping or ignoring Professor Booster or trading guns with Curly. Like I previously said, these are factors and many more can determine whether you get the true ending or not. Not to say it's a bad thing to prevent the player from getting the true ending on the first play, but it does come off as unclear even for second playthroughs. So, do I recommend it? I would most certainly recommend this game to those who love a good story and can get behind a game that has a silent protagonist but interesting characters to make up. A game with an excellent soundtrack and visuals that have been revised and still retain the unique art style. The latest version of Cave Story can be picked up on PC, Nintendo Switch, or Nintendo 3DS, with some welcome refreshes in visuals, music, and overall aesthetic. So, what's our category? This indie game gets our Overcast rating of timeless. The game is well known and cherished among fans alike. The game has seen many more remasters that have improved visuals, remixes, and subtle things like animated text boxes. We at Hypercast believe that Cave Story and the art style withstand the passage of time with its 8 or 16-bit aesthetic. It can be picked up by anyone and enjoyed by many. A question for you. What category did you give this game? And what indie game would you like us to cover next? Comment below. If you like our style and want more gaming related content, click subscribe. It's free and you get the kickback with us. That concludes this episode of Indie Overcast. Till next time.